Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. He watched her like a man clinging to the edge of a dream he wasn't sure he wanted to wake from. His knuckles tightened around the phone, his breath uneven, not from anger, not quite from jealousy, but something raw. Need. Permission. Regret. She stood across the room in soft office light, skin flushed with hesitation, heat brushing her neck like breath. When the boss walked in, the air shifted. A glance passed between them, too long for casual, too quiet for innocent. Her lips parted, not in greeting, but in the absence of words, like her body had already made the decision her mind hadn't caught up to yet. They hadn't spoken about this moment in detail. Not like this. It had started as a fantasy, shared in whispers after midnight, when love and desire blurred into something darker, more dangerous. He had said he wanted to see her, to see someone else have her, but never truly knew what that would mean. Now, she stood poised between two men, one bound to her by vows and trust, the other by power and unspoken hunger. She could feel her husband's eyes tracing her curves, encouraging her with the silence only lovers understand. And still, her pulse raced. Not out of fear, but anticipation. The couch, cold leather warmed by possibility, waited like a secret never meant to be shared. She moved without thinking, each step echoing against the walls of the office, soft moans of her heels making music with the hum of fluorescent lights. Her husband's boss didn't ask permission. He didn't need to. It was written in the way her body arched subtly, inviting him in. And behind them, her husband raised his phone, not as a barrier, but a witness. One hand shaking slightly, the other already betraying him. Their chemistry wasn't reckless, it was deliberate. A fire lit long ago now demanding to burn, no matter what it consumed. As her breath caught in her throat and her body pressed forward into the cushions, she turned her head, locks falling wild over flushed cheeks, and whispered words not meant for comfort, but for survival. "Don't stop recording." And in his eyes, she saw it, love rewritten in ruin, devotion twisted into desire, and all of it captured, forever. Her words, "Don't stop recording," lingered in the space like smoke. The room, once sterile and corporate, now pulsed with something unspoken, fragile, and fierce. She didn't move, not yet. Her body held still in its curve against the leather, but her breath betrayed her, shallow, rising. The silence between the three of them thickened, not empty, but heavy, full of every heartbeat, every glance no one dared explain. The boss hadn't touched her. Not yet. His hands hovered close to her hips, then retreated, as if even he couldn't believe this moment was real. His breath hitched just once as he looked down at her. Not like property. Not even like desire. Like she was a test he couldn't afford to fail. Her head tilted slightly, eyes flicking back to him, catching the flicker of hesitation. Something passed between them, a challenge, a question. She felt her husband's gaze first as warmth, then pressure. His breathing was uneven now, like a man watching his world shift beneath him and loving it more than he feared it. But beneath his arousal, something deeper stirred. His fingers tightened around the phone, and though the lens was steady, he blinked like it took effort to keep watching. Her voice, soft and steady, cut through the quiet. "Is this what you wanted?" It wasn't mocking. It wasn't confirmation. It was a plea and a dare wrapped in velvet. Neither man answered at first. Then her husband, his voice cracked open. "I didn't know I needed to see you like this, until now." It wasn't permission. It was confession. The boss took a slow step closer, and her body tensed, but not in fear. In readiness. His hand lifted, then hesitated. Finally, he traced a single finger down her spine, over the fabric of her blouse, barely grazing. It was nothing. It was everything. Her skin lit up beneath it, goosebumps blooming in its wake. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. But her eyes locked with her husband's again, silently asking, "Are we still okay?" He nodded. Once. Slow. Almost pained. But certain. Still, no one moved further. It was as if the three of them were suspended in glass, desire crackling under the surface, waiting to break. She could feel it, him, the heat of his presence behind her like a storm held back by will alone. One more breath, one more heartbeat too loud, and it would all break open. His hand hovered again, fingers twitching near her lower back, but never landing. And that absence, deliberate, aching, was worse than any touch. Her lips parted, a whisper caught in her throat, but she held it back. This wasn't just about surrender. It wasn't just about the couch or the camera or the script they'd half-written in secret fantasies. This was about something far older. The years she spent quieting her own needs, the nights her husband looked at her with unspoken guilt for wanting this, the moments she had wanted to ask, why me? Why now? The boss stepped back half a pace. Barely. But she felt it. The shift. The restraint. I'm not sure this is smart, he muttered low, almost to himself. She turned her head slightly, enough to meet his gaze over her shoulder. Then why haven't you walked away? His eyes, dark and unreadable, didn't blink. His jaw tightened. Because I keep telling myself it's just curiosity. That I'm only here because your husband wants this. That I'm just helping. And, she asked, voice barely a thread, I don't believe myself anymore. Her heart clenched. Not from fear, but recognition. The kind of truth that makes your body still and your mind race. Because she didn't believe herself either. She could blame the moment, the tension, the arrangement they'd all agreed to, but underneath, there was something more dangerous. She wanted him. Not just his hands or his dominance. She wanted the way he looked at her like he saw the parts she tried to hide. And that terrified her. Her husband made a sound quiet, a breath like glass. She turned to him, catching his eyes. He wasn't angry. He looked wounded. Not by her actions, but by what he was starting to see, that this wasn't just about the act. This was about truth and where it might take them. Her hand brushed the edge of the couch to steady herself and accidentally grazed the boss's fingers. It was barely contact, skin to skin, but they both froze. The moment screamed between them. Then he pulled away. Not because he didn't want more, but because he did. The room felt too still, too full. As if even the air was afraid to move, scared it might break the spell binding them in that impossible silence. Her breath caught at the base of her throat, delicate and trembling, like a bird against glass. She hadn't meant to touch him. Not really. But now she knew the shape of his fingers, the warmth in them, the restraint. He hadn't backed away far. Just enough to leave a space between them so thin, it felt like a heartbeat could bridge it. She could feel him there, his breath steadying, his presence like a low hum across her skin. You weren't supposed to matter, she whispered. She didn't mean for the words to fall like that, like a secret too heavy to hold. His head dropped slightly, as if the words had struck him in the chest. You weren't supposed to look back, he said softly. When you did, I knew I'd already lost. She blinked. Her husband's phone was still raised, but he wasn't filming anymore. The screen had gone dark. His hand had lowered to his side, fingers loose. His eyes were only on her. Do you want me to stop? The boss asked, not as a formality, but as someone offering an escape they didn't want her to take. Her voice broke around the answer. No. The silence after that was a kind of intimacy she'd never known. No touch. No kiss. Just their breath sinking. Their thoughts scraping close. The weight of everything they hadn't said pressing down on them. She turned fully, slowly, rising from the couch. Standing now, they were inches apart, her eyes searching his like a question she didn't know how to ask. He reached out. Just one hand. And stopped. Fingers suspended midair. He didn't touch her. But it felt like he had. And somehow, that was worse. Or better. I don't want to ruin you, he murmured, voice low, almost ashamed. She looked up at him, eyes glassed, lit with something between ache and clarity. You already have, she said. No one moved. Not yet. But the room itself seemed to lean in, waiting for one of them to break. And, just before it did, it ended. The storm came without warning. Rain traced the windows in long, silver ribbons, and the city beyond blurred into watercolor. Inside, the office lights were dimmed, shadows pooling in corners, wrapping the room in a hush that felt sacred. The hour was late, too late for anyone to walk in, too late to pretend they were still just playing parts in a shared fantasy. She stood by the glass, watching the raindrops slide down like tears never shed. Her reflection shimmered faintly, pale skin framed by the soft glow of a desk lamp. She didn't turn when she heard the door click shut. She didn't have to. She felt him, the way she always had, like the air shifted to make space for his presence. "You stayed," she said, her voice almost lost in the rain. "I couldn't leave," he answered, barely louder. She turned slowly, and there he was, tie loose, shirt sleeves rolled, vulnerability showing through every crease and breath. And she was tired of pretending she didn't want to fall into him. Their eyes met and held. No words. None left to say. He stepped forward, not fast, not bold, just real. She met him halfway. And when he reached for her, there was no hesitation. His hand found her waist, warm and steady. Her breath caught, then melted into his as he leaned in, not urgent, but reverent. The first brush of lips was a promise. The second, a surrender. Her hands slid up his chest, fingertips learning the shape of him, how his breath stuttered beneath her touch. He pulled her close, and for the first time, their bodies spoke the words they'd never dared say aloud. Her head tucked beneath his chin. His arms circled her like a prayer. The way he held her wasn't hungry. It was holy. She felt his heartbeat against hers, both rising and falling in a rhythm only they could hear. Clothes whispered against skin, soft and slow, like silk unspooling. His jacket slipped to the floor. Her blouse followed, not in haste, but in gratitude. When he kissed her again, it wasn't lips meeting lips, it was memory and longing colliding in silence. They moved together toward the couch, not to repeat what had almost happened before, but to rewrite it. As they sank into its cushions, the storm outside deepened, thunder low and distant, like the world was echoing their ache. She lay against him, skin warm where it touched his, her breath tangled in the hollow of his neck. His hand traced the curve of her back, each stroke a sentence of its own. There were no instructions, no roles. Only this moment, fragile, burning, and real. They didn't speak. They didn't need to, because in the quiet, their bodies had said everything. Morning came in quietly, like it knew not to knock too hard. The office, once a crucible of desire, now held the soft stillness of consequence. Gray light filtered through the rain-streaked windows. Outside, the city had already begun again, cars moving, lives resuming. But inside, time felt slow, folded in the hush of what had been shared. She was the first to stir. Still curled in the corner of the couch, wrapped in the afterheat of him, she blinked awake to the weight of her own breath. The storm had passed, but something heavier lingered now. Not regret exactly. Not peace either. Something stranger. Something like truth. He was still asleep, head tilted back, one arm around her, the other draped across his chest. His face, softened in sleep, looked almost young, unburdened. She traced his jaw with her eyes, but didn't touch him. She needed a moment that was hers alone. Rising gently, she gathered her blouse, her skirt, the earrings she didn't remember removing. Every step back into her clothes felt like slipping between two lives, one she'd known, and one she'd only just tasted. She didn't hear the door open, but she heard the voice. "Are you okay?" Her husband. Standing in the doorway. She froze. He wasn't angry. His voice didn't shake. But his eyes were glass. Wide open, unreadable. She wondered if he had slept at all. "I came back to find you," he said. "I didn't know I'd be interrupting." She opened her mouth, but no sound came. The man on the couch stirred now, sitting up, realizing too late what had happened. Shirts unbuttoned. The intimacy still alive in the air. Her husband didn't look at him. Only at her. "I wanted this," he said slowly. I asked for it. I thought it would fix something in me. But now. She stepped toward him. Now. He swallowed. Now I just want to know, was it real? Or was it just the game? She couldn't lie. Not after everything. It was real, she said, barely above a whisper. He nodded. Just once. No rage. No storm. Only the sound of something breaking that had already cracked long ago. She didn't say goodbye. Not out of cruelty, not because she couldn't, but because no words would have held the weight of what they'd lived through. Her fingers brushed the edge of the couch, still warm where they'd found each other just hours ago. The ghost of his touch clung to her skin like perfume, not loud, but impossible to forget. Her husband stood by the window now, watching the skyline shift with dawn. The rain had cleared. All that remained was the hush between them, a silence too full to be empty. She stepped beside him. Not close. Not far. Just beside. I didn't plan for it to mean anything, she said softly. I know, he replied. His voice didn't crack. It simply settled into the space like an old song. She turned to look at him, and for a moment, she saw the man she had once fallen in love with, the quiet gentleness, the ache for more. And he saw her too, not just as the woman in the story they'd written together, but as the woman who had dared to live the part. You loved him, he said. She blinked. Maybe. Not the way I love you. But in a way that felt like truth. He nodded. Not to forgive. Not to fight. Just to acknowledge. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, pressed his lips to her forehead, tender, lingering, and let his hand fall from hers. That kiss said everything. I'll always carry you. But I won't keep you. When she finally left the office, she didn't look back. The memory followed like scent on skin. A touch never forgotten. A moment out of time. Whether they would speak again, her and the boss, her and the man who watched it all, wasn't certain. But the truth was, they had already said everything. In bodies. In silence. In the camera that never stopped recording.